Hello and welcome all the black sheep out there. My name is Erica Wild and this is Seek the Seer. So this is actually my first official podcast. So I'm more so playing around, seeing how am I going to do it. This is not going to be my official setup. But again, while I am trying to figure out how do I want to do things, this is just how we going to do things, okay? So I'm actually about to take a sip of some juice before I start. So, where do I want to start? I want to start. For some reason, I just keep saying that, there's a lot of people coming out with podcasts. So probably kind of start with that and start with why is it that I want to start a podcast right now. So I used to make videos a lot back in probably 2018, 2017, maybe 2020. And I would just create videos, whether I was out in nature, sitting in my room, in the house, in the car, it didn't really matter, just more so like a dialogue for myself to experience certain things or to at least express certain things that I was going through. And I felt that I had came to a journey in my life or a point in my life where I was able to communicate my thoughts or my feelings a little bit better than I had previously. So, like I said, I just came to a point in my life where I wanted to start sharing. And so I did that. Well, after a while, I had stopped sharing. I don't know really what went on in my life, but it was probably relationship shit, to be honest. A lot of us get in relationships and we stop doing the things that were once normal to us, something that was like a daily routine for ourselves. A lot of people, they stop working out once they get in a relationship. I'm just going to bring it basically down to we stop caring about the things that once made us happy, the things that was basically our, what do they call them? A hobby. So we end up releasing our hobbies because we are in certain relationships. And for myself and experience off of myself, they were never good relationships. So I hear a lot of people say when you're in good relationships, you don't stop your hobbies. You kind of dive inside of them a little bit more. I don't know about that because I've never been in a relationship that was good enough to still last. You know what I'm saying? Problems because of me and problems because of them as well. So I've been in a lot of relationships where they eventually stopped me from doing things that I actually really cared about. And making videos was one of them. Talking and communicating with people out there was one of them. Once we become adults, a lot of people, they try to say like we need to get outside more and make more like connections like we used to. But to be honest, once we become adults and we start working and life just takes over the way that it takes over, it takes up all of our time and it tires us out. So once we have time to ourselves, we really don't choose to share that with new people. It's usually people that we've known for years. So that was my way of still being able to share and get to know new people, and make new connections. So that was how I made those connections. So like I said, I've chosen not to get on really on social media or just record myself as much, even though I'm trying to do it now with the podcast. But I had stopped. I kind of wanted to back away from sharing my face in the videos because I noticed that people tend to judge the messenger. Now, I really don't give a fuck about that, to be honest. But if it takes away from the message, then I have to put ego to the side and say it's not about face. It's not about what you don't look like or what you do look like, and it's more about the message. So I need you to take a back seat and allow your message to ring upon ears. Again, we're the black sheep. Okay, and this is seeking the seers. So yeah, that's what it's really about. I find myself, more so the beginning of my journey, and a little bit now, but it doesn't affect me or come to me as much as it used to back then. When we would have when we would go through journeys in our life where we would change and develop who we are, and develop into the person that we are becoming, we get a lot of judgment from others. We get people basically saying, that we're weird, or we don't know what we're talking about, or we should listen to them, or wait until we grow up, and stuff like that. If it's an elder and it's a wise elder, then heed thy word. But if it's not an elder and they're just, trying to shun you to reverse back into the person you once were that was no longer serving you, then throw that shit in the trash. You know what I'm saying? And again, we're the black sheep, so we're used to that. We're used to that shit anyway. We're used to people calling us weird, or people not really liking what we say and stuff like that. So it doesn't really bother me, but I notice, again, like I say, and especially I don't hear it as much as I used to. When I was younger, I would hear this shit all the time, and especially when I was going through my quote unquote awakening journey. Okay, my mental breakdown and breakthrough and rebuild. So yeah, if you ever hear noises in the back, I do have my cats here, and one of my cats, Gizmo, he will make his debut pretty soon, probably. But yeah, so I'm going to start with just a little bit about myself. I'm Erica Wild, like I said. I am the oldest of about 7. I was born in Oakland, California. I was raised in the high desert with my mother and my siblings. I had my first traumatic death in the family when I was probably about 12, 11, something like that, around that time. And it was actually my dad. So my father had passed away. And we weren't living with them at the time, but we would go back and see them, often. So that was my first traumatic experience with death. But I still really didn't understand it. And I had lost grandmothers after that, but it still didn't affect me like it was when I had lost my father, actually. But it was about when I was 18 when I had lost someone that wasn't even close to me, but they were close enough where we were in the same school, we rode the same bus, we lived in the same neighborhood, and this person had been murdered. And that was my first time, like, at an age like that, where I really understood death. And I had went through a small depression, because before that, I didn't think that people my age at that time, or young people, could die. And I know that might seem naive to some people, but to me, it wasn't. It was actually quite scary. I didn't really understand what was going on. And that's when I started thinking of death, and I started thinking of death with myself, So I turned 18 and I moved back to Oakland, California. I lived in Oakland, California with my grandmother for about 5 or 6 years maybe. I actually think I was out there for about 10 years. But I lived with her for about 5, 7 maybe. And I learned a lot of new stuff then. I let go of a lot of anger and fear when I was living with my grandmother due to therapy. I was put in therapy to just figure out a lot of childhood trauma that, we all go through. So there's no need to get on that and talk about it today, but we might break into it one day. So maybe around, I want to say my earliest 20s, but it could have been my mid-20s, actually. My mid-20s, I went through a quote unquote awakening, breaking of the mind, rebuilding of the mind, the spirit, and the body. And in the transition of that, I found myself again losing myself, but also finding myself. But that was scary. Like, when people think about these awakenings, it is kind of painted as this beautiful thing, and it can be very beautiful in the ending, and sometimes in the middle as well. But in the beginning, it is not beautiful. It is ugly, and it is very scary and frightening and confusing, and you will think that you're losing your mind. And at that time, I did think that I was losing my mind. I did not feel like me. I didn't even know who I was, you know. Again, going through a lot of the childhood trauma that we go through, and speaking with my therapist, I started realizing things that I had, in a sense, deemed normal because it was happening for so long in my life. One of those things was I would hear chatter and, in a sense, what I don't want to say voices, because I didn't hear anyone talking to me, but it was like my mind was a chatterbox, like a radio, and it was just stuck between all of these stations, and they were all talking at one time. The best way I can explain it, if that wasn't enough, was being at like a party or a stadium, and everyone is just talking. There's hundreds of people and they're all talking at the same time. And that's what I was experiencing in my mind. So when I went through this awakening, the chatter became louder. And I had, for the first time in my life, became emotional. And it's like, it took me to be in my mid-20s to become emotional. Yes, it actually did. Before then, I was very withdrawn, and I just kept a lot of my emotions and my feelings to myself, except anger. Like, anger was always there, but it was still dormant. But once I went into this awakening, and also being 18, anger hit hard, but, and going to therapy, and that's what happens usually when you're in therapy. But, yeah, so, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people relate to that, but I went through just this thing where it was so loud in my mind. And there was also some other health issues that had started happening. I'm a firm believer in, if you are not being who you are supposed to be, and if you are letting people control your life or your spirit will leave you for a moment. And in the midst of it leaving you for a moment, you will have to surrender to you. You will have to find a faith that you never knew that you had. And that's what happened to me. I found a faith that I didn't know existed until going through that transition in my life. And I was on medication and stuff like that because, again, those health issues and then depression and anxiety and all these things. So I decided to take myself off of these medications. And I was having a serious health issue, actually. I was having seizures, and they were seizures induced by stress. So I decided to take myself off of the medication, and I decided to live a healthier lifestyle, a more spiritual lifestyle. I wanted to find out things about myself. I dived more into nature. I became one with nature. I started growing my hair, and these were my first set of locks. They were actually freeform locks. And if you are someone who has had freeforms or ever seen anyone who had freeforms, you will understand why they call us weird. Okay, but someone who actually had it or has it, you will understand that it takes a very confident person, and it takes you may be very low self-esteem to start with, but when you make that decision, your confidence just goes up tremendously. And I decided to I wanted to know, who do I look like? I mean, who am I? Because before that, and when I was depressed, I started seeing this face on my face that was not me. Okay, it was someone actually who I didn't want to be like. And I was not happy about that. So I wanted to find out who was I and what did I really look like, and what was my real thoughts, and what was the things that I really wanted to do, and where did I really want to go, and what was I really into, and allowing my hair to grow the way that it did. I fell in love with myself. I started understanding myself. I found myself. So that was that. I went through relationships, good ones, bad ones, none that lasted long term, but they lasted for what they needed to be used for. You heard people are supposed to be in your life for a lifetime, a season, a reason. Those people were in my life for a season and a reason. And the older I've become, I've understood what those reasonings were for. I cannot and do not blame the destruction of a lot of my relationships on my partners. I blame 50% of that on me as well. You know what I'm saying? Even if I was not treated right, I have to blame 50 on me because I was not able to discern what was not meant for me. All relationships that we come into are not relationships that are supposed to become a romantic partnership. Some of these relationships are just meant to be friendships, long life friendships. But there were certain things that I was and was not, mainly was not taught as a child. And that was one of them. And I had to understand that the older I've gotten. So moving on from that, eventually I got my first apartment. I got my first apartment at 28, Oakley, California. And that was an experience. It was an experience because that's when I started really diving into my spirituality and being one with life and nature and, all that comes with that. But I had basically let a stranger move in with me and became in a romantic relationship with this person. And it was not a good relationship because I didn't really know this person in the first place. And I had still shared all of the benefits that life had given me from my hard work with this person who I have no idea what was their relationship with their self, with God, with their belief systems, their ambitions. I had no idea of any understanding really of who this person was except what they told me in face value. And as we know, once we become older, that means absolutely fucking nothing. So that was that. After that relationship ended, I had moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. That is where I am at now. And moving here, I joined in 2 more relationships. This is my 3rd place that I'm at right now, but I had 2 other places, and I had shared it with people that were long-term friends, and the relationships ended up not working out, and I had to move on, and I had to learn lessons. This one that I'm in now is the biggest blessing to me. Because how I feel about it. In this point in my life where I am at now, I choose to be celibate. I choose to be about me. I choose to really understand me and put me first. I choose to discern certain relationships. Like, do not let people in just because of an emotion that you initially feel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I choose to really dive deep into people if I even want to, but the way I've been feeling more so now is I choose that I don't want to. I've done that enough. I'm 30 now. I've given a lot of time into people for a very long time. And this is the first time in my life where I have chosen to give all of that energy and space and love to myself rather than give it to someone who potentially doesn't even need that. They more so need somewhere to lay their head than a heart to connect with. Okay? We all have different love issues, confidence issues, low self-esteem issues, mental, spiritual, emotional, and I choose to not focus on other people's issues right now. That is their burden to carry, not mine. I choose to carry my burden. I choose to talk to my spirits and God and my angels about my burden. I'm not giving my burden to no one to carry because it is mine to carry. This podcast is for the lone wolf. This podcast is for the people who are seeking the seekers. Everybody can't seek out these things that's happened in their life. They don't even know where to begin with. They don't know where to start with. Okay, what to start with. They've tried time and time again. They've gotten knocked down, got back up, gotten knocked down again. And some have children, some have jobs that, again, just doesn't allow them to give time where time is needed. So I want to set this podcast aside for those people. And that person is also me. I'm not going out of my way for no one. I'm going out of my way for myself. So I want you to understand that I'm not going out of my way for no one. I'm going out of my way for myself. And if the lone wolves just so happen to feel a connection, then connect with the connector. Okay? Connect with the connector. This is Seek the Seer. I'm Erica Wild. And thank you for joining me, Lone Wolves. Peace out.